What do you see as the main trends or themes that will influence digital learning, in the higher education sector over the next couple of years?
So I suppose it's a bit of a crystal ball sort of question. Although I think there's some really good indicators out there. I think because of COVID and other things, digital learning will just become a more integral part of the delivery of all programs and offerings. And I think we really have to take it on board that there is going to be change, because it helps us support our students in their learning better. There'll be an increasing need also as employment changes for us all to continually reskill, upskill, what I call re-knowledge and up-knowledge. And I think that's going to be important for all employment sectors, locally and globally. And so I think digital learning opportunities will provide the real opportunity to make that change, because you can have the on-demand approach. It can be flexible. The anytime, any place, any device sort of mantra, I think, will become much more real and available to populations of learners that perhaps haven't been able to engage previously, and become part of the workplace that we're all learning all of the time. So I think there's lots of opportunity there. I think there's also a growing appetite for lifelong learning options. I think digital learning provides that opportunity for new learners to really connect and enjoy learning differently. I think if used well, the technology and the digital element really can bring that engagement and enjoyment flavour through really well. And I think we have to be really conscious as educational designers to make sure that learning is fun. It's not gimmicky, but it's fun and delivered well. And we really want to engage. We want to get back to our learning all the time. But I suppose if I think about particular interventions, I think we'll see more gamification in learning, because again, I think that brings that enjoyment and engagement factor. Augmented virtual and mixed realities, I think they'll become much more mainstay of our education delivery. I think COVID and other things has taught us to think about online and remote learning differently in terms of how do we get great social connection, social learning connection between our students, which is really easy, or potentially easy in a face-to-face environment, much more difficult in an online environment. I think technology will drive adaptive learning. We'll see increases in AI, virtual training, so that somebody doesn't always have to be in the workplace to still undergo some of that training that they might need. We'll see a rise, I think, of learning experience platforms. And then the one that always sort of springs to mind right now is what's the whole opportunity around the metaverse for education? And I think it'll be really interesting to see who really leads on that in the coming years, because I think that will really take a bit of a pace going forward very soon.
Do you mind telling us kind of what you mean by the metaverse there?
So for me, that's thinking about how you can really explore your learning, I think, in a different way. And I feel in some ways it's like almost going into a shop or into a university or an education centre, and being able to look around and see what's available and pull things off of that virtual wall, have a look at that video, maybe interact with that AI chat box in a very different way, but almost like a hologram with you. I think there's huge potential to make that online learning almost like a face-to-face experience, but having different learners in at the same time as well. So you actually can speak to and chat to and interact and collaborate with your colleagues directly there. I think there's a huge way to go, don't get me wrong, but I think we should really be starting to think about that, because there's all the sort of ingredients are already there.
Of course, I was just thinking as you were saying that, it kind of it was the VR that you spoke about, the AI that you spoke about, and it just made me think about something like, if we think about, international education and our international students, you could have almost like a virtual university where prospective students from overseas could come and spend some time in that university and kind of walking through it and kind of talking to people and seeing what it's all about, even sitting in a virtual lecture or a tute or something like that. So it's kind of, I guess in some respects, as we all become a little bit more disconnected and isolated physically, I guess what you're talking about there is a way for us all to still be able to come together virtually. And particularly if you can't go to a physical location, then that metaverse allows you to kind of experience that location.
Yeah, and look, and it could help with accessibility. I realise that there are sometimes technology issues, internet that. But I think it really is an enabler of bringing more people in. And when I was at Monash University, we had an alliance with Warwick University in the UK, and we ran a particular module there that had the students from both ends at the same time, and that special rooms were created at the two institutions that actually almost created a full circle. So there was a half circle of students at Monash and a half circle of students at Warwick. But when that then came together online, it was a whole group of students together. So it was almost like the beginnings of the thinking about how to bring those sort of students together. And it worked pretty well. There was obviously the typical things that didn't go quite so well, but overall it was a really good outcome, and I think the students felt that they really were integrated. And then you've got the real transfer of students. Students came over from Warwick, and students from Monash went over to Warwick. So, as I say, I think some real good ingredients are already there. It's about how we take that forward and who takes that forward into the future.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Coming back to something you said previously, about kind of providing learning for people, at a point of need. We're seeing more of a trend in that direction. It feels like even in the last few years in particular, it's gone from learning being this prescribed thing where you will do it in this order, in this particular way, and that's the same for all, 7,000 people in our organization, more to, well, here's a hub of resources and they're all bite-sized, and we recognize that you're time poor and that you may not need to do the learning the same as the person sitting beside you, but we're going to offer you these learning resources that are sitting there ready for you at your point of need. And just sort of providing more of that kind of bite-sized collection of learning resources rather than a kind of a mandated rollout that's the same for everyone.
Yeah, it's really, I think, along the journey of real personalisation. And I think the introduction of MOOCs back in 2012, yes, MOOCs haven't taken over the world, perhaps in the same way that they were thought to probably have the potential to. But I think they've really taught us a lot in terms of how we package things together, how the learner can be really in the driving seat themselves of when they want to learn, how they want to learn, to dip into different things. And I think that's a real benefit and a real positive.
Yeah, great. All right.